Hello friends, today I'm going to be sharing with you my book annotation code. I find it extremely helpful to annotate the books we read because it helps us to retain the information, engaged with the reading and get the most value out of it. I'm going to illustrate my 7 annotation codes through the latest book that I read, along with providing a brief review for the book. So the book is titled The Genesis of Science, How the Christian Middle Ages Launched the Scientific Revolution, and it's authored by James Hannam, who is a graduate of both Oxford and Cambridge, studied physics and got his PhD in the history of science. Now, this is a very interesting book for 2 reasons. Number one, I really liked that it defeats the dogmatic ideas we probably have about the Middle Ages and how it was in the best interest of certain Renaissance historians to mislabel the former era as a dark age with constant conflict between faith and reason. However, this book walks us through historical and scientific evidence that this is untrue and that actually this period was the dawn of the age of reason, as well as that modern science was built on the strong foundations that were led in the Middle Ages. So the second reason I like that book is also that the author was not by any means trying to portray an ideal period. He was very objective about all the shortcomings of the rulers or the religious leaders of that period. So moving on to my annotation books. So as I mentioned, I have 7 annotation codes and they are very simple. The first one is whenever I add the word journal in the margin or the letter J. So if I do this, that simply means that I read a passage that I thought it's worth to take it into my journal and create a spread for it, or add it along my notes in a commonplace book, which I'll probably talk about in another video. An example of this are this small passage here that I have journal, which means I will copy it in my notebook. Okay, so moving on, the next annotation key that I use is basically adding a summary for a certain passage. So whenever you come across a lengthy passage with a lot of details, it's highly recommended you add a summary in the margins that is made of keywords or bullet points. This way, anytime you go back to this page, you will probably right away remember what was it about, looking at the keywords you added, and you don't necessarily have to read again this passage word by word. Next annotation code is kind of similar, but just adding a title to a paragraph. So over here I had this paragraph that I add 2 brackets next to it, and I added a title for it, blood circulation. And if you do this along the book will look more grouped into ideas, and it also engages you to your reading. The next 2 annotation keys, they are with the purpose to improve your linguistic skills. Remember that among the numerous benefits of reading, self-learning, enjoyment, it's also improving your linguistic skills, whether you are reading in your mother tongue or another language. So anytime I come across an expression or a metaphor, I add the annotation EXP as an abbreviation of expression. And similar to that is the next annotation code, but only for words and not expressions, where I add VOC. So if I add VOC, that means that I came across a new word that I had to look it up. Eventually, when you do this, by time you will collect so many expressions that you can use in your writing or your daily life, and so many new words. You can also collect them all in a small notebook aside. Next annotation code, it's before last, is whenever I add a question mark. So if I add a question mark, that means that I basically had questions. And what I read here was not perfectly clear. I feel like I need maybe to research it later. Basically, I came across a passage that requires further clarification. And finally, I add the word important here. For me, important I highlighted as 2 asterisks. I always use 2 asterisks. I don't know why, but it was very visually obvious to me to highlight any important paragraph as with 2 asterisks. You can still write an abbreviation of the word important in any language, and it's 100% up to you to decide what is important. It's maybe something you want to reflect upon, relate to, or apply it in your life. So I hope I didn't forget anything. Those were my 7 annotation keys. And just a last comment about this book. When I read this book, I came across so many names of people that I never heard about before. Historians, philosophers, researchers that worked and done amazing work in a very challenging political environment. And I'm quoting now from the book that just because we don't know their names doesn't mean that we should not recognize their achievements. So maybe the Dark Ages weren't so dark after all. Anyway, I really would like to hear your comments, and maybe you can share how do you annotate your books. But those were my 7 simplified annotation keys, and hope to see you in the next video.